ask me how I became a sex educator, strap in, because I'm about to tell you a tale. Hi, I'm Nadine Thornhill, sexuality educator. Growing up, I had no clue that being a sex educator was a career that one could have. For me, sex ed was just the sort of once a year, super awkward part of gym class. But shout out to all y'all phys ed teachers out there who are giving your students amazing sex ed. I see you. My life's plan was to be a great stage actor. I started acting when I was a kid. I continued through high school. I went to university and studied drama, and then I made my way out into the big wide world to start my acting career. And for several years, I was living that struggling actor life. Real talk. I mean, I was never really struggling financially thanks to my partner. We got together when I was in my undergrad. We got married not long after we graduated. He's a math whiz. He's always had really high paying jobs in high tech. So financially, it's never been a struggle. But career wise, I was into the whole hustle, going on auditions, getting rejected a lot, and sometimes getting hired to work as an actual actor, which was always great. But in between those gigs, I had to have day jobs. And I had a lot of different day jobs. I worked in a call center. I worked for the federal government. I taught. I worked in a daycare center, just all sorts of different things. So I was several years into my acting career and I was in need of a new day job. And a friend of mine mentioned that my favorite local sex shop was hiring. This was a really beautiful, light, bright boutique. A lot of the staff were queer. They were really knowledgeable. They sold toys, they sold safer sex products, they sold books, they sold videos. And I always felt really just safe and comfortable and happy when I shopped there. And so I figured that it would probably be a pretty fun place to work. I might get a discount on some of my sex toys and products. And so I applied and I was hired. As it turned out, it was a great job. I did get a discount. I learned all about different types of condoms and safer sex products. I learned a lot about lube. I've got a video on that. I became sort of a vibrator connoisseur, and I got to work with all sorts of customers. And if someone came into the store feeling nervous or awkward or unsure, sometimes I could help reassure them that they were in a safer space and that whatever they were into or not into sexually was okay. And that was a really nice feeling. One of the services that we offered in our store were after hours workshops, and my manager figured that because I had a performance background that I might be good at facilitating workshops. That sounded great to me. I got to, make some extra money, and I do enjoy talking to people, and so I was like, yeah, sign me up, I'll facilitate some workshops. So I was sent home with a stack of books to do some reading just so I had some, basic knowledge and can answer basic questions. I had to shadow a few workshops, and then I got my job and I got to facilitate my first workshop, which I think was Cunnilingus 101, maybe, or Sex Toys 101, I can't remember. But anyway, I was very, very excited. So as a facilitator, my job was to share information and help people learn. And I felt that the most important thing I could do to really help people in that learning was to do what I could, again, to create that environment where people felt comfortable speaking openly about their sexuality and their sexual experiences. The best thing about doing that job is that it started to feel more okay for me to talk about, think about, and explore my own sexuality in ways that I never had before. And I really started to understand that human sexuality and human sexual experiences were far more expansive than I'd been led to believe growing up, and that there were so many ways to be sexual or not and still be okay as a human, which was really exciting. Now, at that point, I had been blogging in some form or another for several years. Shout out to LiveJournal. Because I was so excited about this new stuff I was learning at work, I started writing about some of it and sharing it on my blog. It was reasonably popular, or not. I mean, people other than like my parents and my partner and my close friends were reading it, like strangers read the blog, so that was popular by my standards. I had enough reach that folks at other blogs and who worked for other publications discovered it and reached out to me and asked me to write pieces for them. Those first writing gigs were the first time that anyone had paid me to create content about sexuality. From there, I was brought on to write a regular sex advice column on a local arts and culture website. I started getting hired to create and facilitate my own workshops outside of the store. I even got tapped to create an annual survey about the dating and sexual behaviors of people who lived in my city. And it was like that for the first 2-3 years of my sex ed career. I was doing things, but it was definitely still a side hustle, and my main career focus was acting. Then I had a baby. I wanted to stay in theater, but acting was very challenging for me as a young parent, because if you work in theater, a lot of that work, the rehearsals and also the performances, are in the evening, they're at night, and in the evenings and at night I wanted to be at home with my family, and so I transitioned away from acting and more into playwriting. I wrote and produced 3 plays, and those plays were on the subjects of relationships and marriage, non-monogamy, and my most acclaimed play was about a young black woman who had a job in a sex store. Where do I get my ideas? So my theater career and my sex education side hustle were starting to come together, and then the universe intervened. I had been at the sex store for a little over 3 years when I decided it was time to move on. And honestly, I didn't know what I was going to move on to, but I submitted my notice. The day after I submitted that notice, I got 5 or 6 emails and phone calls from different friends about a job posting at the local Planned Parenthood. They wanted to hire a program director for a youth initiative that combined sex education and theater. So long story short, yeah, I got that job. So I ran this incredible program where a group of high school youth would work with a drama coach and then various community educators to learn sex ed concepts, and then they would turn that into theatrical production, and we would tour that show to different schools in our city. After the performances, the audience could, connect with our performers and get more information, and it was fantastic because they were learning from kids who were their own age and could really understand what they were going through. And I spent a lot of time connecting with teachers, staff at the school, and even parents. The response to the show was overwhelmingly positive, and so many of the adults that I spoke to were super impressed with the youth and how knowledgeable they were and how comfortable they were speaking openly about sexuality. But they were also really relieved because they recognized that the show and our group of youth were really helping to open up conversations that they wanted to be having with their students, or they wanted to be having with their kids at home, but didn't really know how to get into. And the more I connected with educators and the more I connected with parents, the more I realized that one of the biggest barriers to people having open, honest conversations with their teens and with their kids about sexuality was really just a lack of confidence and not knowing what to say and not knowing where to find the information. And I could relate to that because once upon a time, I didn't have the information and I hadn't known how to have those conversations. The only reason that I could now is because I'd had all this practice because of my work. And I felt that, people shouldn't have to be experts in this field to talk about things that ultimately are fairly basic and are very common experiences that a lot of us share. Things like our bodies, we're talking about things like how we connect with others in relationships. We're talking about things like, having desires or having lack of desire. These are all really common human experiences. A lot of it is just that we're not used to talking about them out loud, and I really wanted to change that. And I kept having this idea that, if more parents and more caregivers and more teachers really knew how to provide, justice-oriented, pleasure-focused, sex-positive education, then an entire generation of kids could grow up without, the shame or the embarrassment or the awkwardness that a lot of us feel around sexuality. And it was like, that could kind of be world changing potentially. And then suddenly all at once I was like, boom, lightning bolt. Okay, I want to start my own practice and I want to teach other adults how to do what I have learned how to do. Once I had that brainwave, I decided that I needed to go back to school. I am someone who grew up with the idea that in order to be taken seriously, that you need to be credentialed and that your credentials basically have to come from an academic institution. I applied and was accepted to do my doctorate, and I have decided, in retrospect, to accept that that was the path I was meant to take. Why do I say it like that? I say it because, as it turns out, the years that I was working on my doctorate were very, very challenging years, partly because the work itself was challenging. I would not describe myself as someone who's naturally academically inclined, but I can kind of pull it out when I have to. But more specifically, there were a lot of challenges in my personal life that I'm not going to get into. And so had I known going in what those years were going to be like, I can't say for sure that I would have done it, but I did. And so I have just decided to reconcile that in my own head as that was meant to happen. Those were the struggles that I had to go through. And I will say that doing my doctorate allowed me to meet some really amazing friends and colleagues that I am still connected to this day. And my personal goal was that I wanted to finish my degree before I turned 40. And I did. I got in just under the wire. I graduated, I think, 9 or 10 days before my 40th birthday. So I did it. I accomplished my goal. And then once I graduated, it was time to start my practice. And I had no idea how to do that. I hosted workshops, and sometimes 3 people came, sometimes nobody came. I did more freelance writing. Sometimes other groups would bring me in to host free workshops, and more people came to that. I started this YouTube channel. My practice gained more momentum when the province of Ontario, which is where I live, announced that they were going to be introducing some updated, more robust, more comprehensive sex ed components in our health and phys ed curriculum. That was a controversial announcement. There were a lot of people who were concerned. They thought, oh, sex education is going to be starting too early, is it going to be age appropriate? And so on the day that the updated curriculum was released, I downloaded it, I read through it, and I live tweeted all of the sex education components. That got me a lot of attention, and suddenly, I had media outlets who wanted to interview me. I was on the news, and that started to put me on people's radars. And so then I started getting hired for more jobs, and when I hosted workshops, more people came, and they started paying to learn from me. I started getting hired at colleges and universities and by school boards. I was actually tapped to write a whole curriculum, which was really neat. I got to contribute to books and publications. I started doing consulting. I got tapped to co-write and co-host Everybody Curious, my web series. And so eventually all of those things started to come together, and I had a career and became a full-fledged, independent sex educator with a sex education business, which is where I am today. So basically, this has been a really long journey with a lot of detours, a lot of trial and error, a lot of accidents, a lot of things that I did not plan for. And had I gone into this career intentionally and knowing what I know now, I would have made a lot of different moves, because I am 15 years into this now, and I feel like I've hit my stride, but it took me a long time to get here. In 2021, I'm going to start working with other aspiring and emerging sexuality educators, because If this is the kind of work that you love, this can be an incredible career. And if you want help getting started, I would actually love to help you do this. In the comments below, let me know what you're doing in your life now. Now, it could be your job or career, but it could be, something with your family, or it could be a hobby or a passion. Anything that you're doing that you're really into right now, and let me know if that's what you envisioned yourself doing when you were a kid. That's all for now. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye.